I still remember the scent of that morning, soft rain on the windowsill, and the faint aroma of the coffee my son used to make before leaving for work. It was one of those mornings that felt ordinary until it wasn't. My name is Mai, and I suppose I've lived long enough to understand that life rarely warns you before it changes everything. That day, I woke early. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of the old wall clock my husband bought when we first moved here 40 years ago. My knees ached a little, as they do every morning, but I smiled through it. The pain I've learned means I'm still here, still breathing, still capable of loving, still a mother. I was excited that morning because my son, Daniel, had called the night before. He'd said, "Mom, I have something to tell you tomorrow. Big news." I remember the warmth in his voice, the hesitation, and something else I couldn't name. Maybe I didn't want to. So I cooked his favorite breakfast, eggs fried in butter, 2 pieces of toast with strawberry jam, and a pot of chamomile tea. I set the table for 2 the way I always did when I knew he'd visit. At 9:10, my phone buzzed. I reached for it with a little smile. But it wasn't Daniel calling. It was Sophie, his girlfriend. I liked Sophie. She was kind and gentle, with soft eyes that looked a little unsure whenever she was around me. I thought it was just nerves. I was never the intimidating mother type, at least. I didn't think I was. I picked up, cheerful. "Good morning, dear! Daniel told me you 2 had some big news for me." There was a pause, long enough for my smile to fade. Then her voice came, quiet, careful. "Ma, I was gonna call yesterday, but things happened so fast." I frowned, thinking maybe Daniel had gotten a new job or they'd decided to move. "Is everything all right?" Yes, she said quickly. "Everything's fine. Actually better than fine. I could hear her take a breath. "Daniel and we got married yesterday." For a second, I thought she was joking. The rain outside slowed to a drizzle, the house fell completely silent, and I could hear the thud of my own heartbeat in my ears. "You what?" I whispered. "Wu got married," she said again, more softly. "Yesterday." I didn't know what to say. My hand trembled around the phone. "Yesterday. My son got married yesterday. And his mother, wasn't there." I must have gone quiet for too long, because Sophie started talking fast, her words tripping over one another. "It was sudden, May. We didn't plan it like this. The courthouse had a cancellation, and Daniel said he didn't want to wait anymore. It just felt right. We were going to tell you today, I promise." I could hear her voice cracking, like she was afraid of me being angry. But I wasn't angry. Not yet, just hollow. "Does Daniel know you're calling me?" I asked. "Yes. He wanted to, but he thought maybe I should tell you first. He's nervous." I closed my eyes. My son, nervous to talk to his own mother about the most important day of his life. "Tell him," I said quietly. "I'll be fine. Congratulations to you both." Before she could say more, I ended the call. And then I just sat there, staring at the 2 plates of eggs slowly going cold on the table. It's strange how the smallest moments can break you. A phone call. A pause. A truth you didn't see coming. I thought I'd raise my son to share everything with me, to trust me. But maybe I'd been too proud of being the strong mother, too composed. Maybe he thought I wouldn't understand. I didn't cry then. I just sat still, my hands folded on the table, listening to the rain pick up again outside. The wedding had already happened. There would be no dress to see, no aisle to walk down, no mother's tears of joy, just silence. Later that afternoon, Daniel finally called. His voice was hesitant, small. "Mom, Sophie told you." "Yes," I said, keeping my tone calm. She told me. "I wanted to tell you myself. I'm sorry, Mom. It just happened so fast." "I see," I replied. "So fast that your mother couldn't even be there?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "It wasn't like that. You know I love you, right? I didn't want to hurt you." I swallowed hard. "You did, though." "I know," he whispered. "And I'm sorry." For a while, we just breathed into the silence. Then I said, "I hope she makes you happy." "She does," he said softly. "She really does? Then that's all that matters." I lied. That night, I found myself looking through an old box in the closet. The one with his baby pictures, his school drawings, the little card he made me for Mother's Day when he was 8. It said, "To Mom, my best friend in the world. I'll never forget you." I smiled at that. Then the tears came quietly, the kind that burn your chest but never make a sound. I whispered to the empty room, "I didn't forget you either, my boy." The days that followed were heavy, like carrying a shadow that wouldn't leave. Sophie sent a few texts, kind ones. She invited me to dinner the next week. I said I'd think about it, but I couldn't bring myself to go. What would I even say? Congratulations on marrying my son without me there?
No, I needed time.
A week later, Daniel came by. He knocked softly on the door like a child again. I almost didn't open it, but I did. He stood there holding a small bouquet of white daisies. Hi, Mom. I looked at him for a long moment. He was older, yes, but still had that same uncertain smile he'd worn when he was 5 and had broken my vase trying to catch a fly. I stepped aside. Come in. He looked around the house like everything was too familiar and too distant all at once. The photos on the mantel, the smell of lemon polish, the framed picture of him with his late father. Tea, I asked. He nodded. Please. I made it just the way he liked. Milk first, then tea, 2 spoons of sugar. Some habits don't die, even when trust does. We sat across from each other, the daisies between us. I'm sorry, he said again. We didn't plan to shut you out. It just felt like the right moment. And I thought if I told you beforehand, you'd try to stop me. I frowned. Stop you? Why would I do that? He hesitated. Because you never really liked Sophie. That hit me like a slap I didn't expect. Daniel, that's not true. You barely talked to her. Mom, I was trying to give you both space, I said quietly. I didn't want to interfere. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. I know you meant well, but it always felt like you were waiting for her to fail some kind of test. She felt it too. I looked down at my hands. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had been measuring her against a version of someone I thought he should marry. Someone more like me. After a long silence, I said, You're right. Maybe I was unfair. I just didn't want to lose you. He reached across the table then, taking my hand in his. You'll never lose me, Mom, I promise. But I knew that wasn't entirely true. Marriage changes things, it should. Still, in that moment, I saw the little boy in him again, and the mother in me softened. When he left that evening, he hugged me tighter than he had in years. Come meet her soon, he whispered. Please, I said I would, and I meant it. Because love, I've learned, doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes it hurts first. Sometimes it teaches you how to let go, just enough to let someone grow. That night, I sat by the window with my cup of tea and whispered into the quiet. Maybe you didn't need me there to marry her, my son, but you'll always need me to remind you where you came from. A week passed before I agreed to visit them. Daniel called almost every day, checking in gently, never pushing. Sophie texted me pictures of the meals she cooked. Casseroles, soups, little attempts to show me she was trying to be the kind of daughter-in-law I could love. I didn't reply much. I didn't know how to. It wasn't anger anymore. It was hesitation. Like my heart was standing at the edge of something I wasn't ready to cross. But one morning I woke up and realized, if I kept waiting, I'd only build a wall between us taller than my pride. And pride is a lonely companion. So, I called Daniel. Are you two home tonight? I asked. He sounded surprised, then relieved. Yes! Yes, Mom. Come for dinner. Sophie's making lasagna. She's been dying for you to try it. I smiled faintly. All right, I'll come. That evening, I put on my soft blue cardigan, the one Daniel had bought me for my birthday 2 years ago. I tied my hair neatly, added a touch of rose-scented perfume, and packed a small gift in my purse, a framed picture of Daniel as a child holding my hand at the beach. When I arrived, their home looked modest but warm, potted plants by the door, a little wind chime that tinkled as I stepped inside. Sophie greeted me first. She wore a floral apron, her hair tied back, her smile nervous but genuine. My, I'm so happy you came. Her voice trembled slightly. She meant it. I nodded politely. Hello, dear. Daniel appeared behind her, his grin wide. You made it? Of course, I said. You invited me? They both laughed, awkwardly at first, then softer. It was a good start. Dinner was quiet at first. Sophie talked about her work. She was a nurse at the local clinic, something I'd always admired but never asked much about. Daniel chimed in with stories about their new routines, and I listened, sipping my tea. When Sophie brought out the lasagna, she set it down gently in front of me. I followed your recipe, she said shyly. Daniel told me how you make it, with extra garlic and fresh basil. I looked at her, surprised. You remembered that? She nodded. He talks about your cooking all the time. For a second, something in my chest softened. I took a bite. It wasn't perfect. A bit too much salt, but it was good, really good. I smiled faintly. Not bad, dear. Not bad at all. Her eyes sparkled with relief. Thank you. May, that means a lot. Daniel reached under the table and gave her hand a small squeeze. I noticed. And for the first time since that phone call, I didn't feel angry. I just felt old, maybe. The kind of old that knows when to stop fighting what's already written. After dinner, Sophie brought tea to the living room. We sat together while Daniel stepped out to take a call. The silence between us felt heavy but not unbearable. "My," she began quietly, "I know it hurt you. What we did. Getting married without telling you. I want you to know it wasn't because we didn't care." I stared into my cup. "Then why?" She hesitated, her fingers twisting around the mug. "Because Daniel was afraid. Not of you, but of what you'd think of me." I looked up at her then. "And what did he think I'd think?" "That I wasn't good enough." Her voice cracked a little, and I could see tears welling in her eyes. "I grew up in foster care," she said softly. "I don't have family like you do. I never had a mother to show me what love in a home should look like. So when Daniel asked me to marry him, I was scared. I thought maybe if I waited, I'd lose him. But if we told you, you'd think I wasn't worthy of him, so we just did it." Her words hit me like a wave, not of anger, but of realization. All this time, I had been mourning the moment I lost, without understanding the fear she carried into that choice. I set down my cup, my throat tight. "Sophie," I said softly, "you could have told me that. I would have listened." She smiled sadly. "I know that now. But back then, I didn't know how." There was something so raw, so painfully honest in her eyes, that I couldn't hold on to my pride any longer. I reached over, placed my hand over hers. "I may not have been there for your wedding," I said quietly, "but if you'll let me, I'd like to be here for your marriage." Her lips trembled into a smile. "I'd love that, maid." When Daniel returned, he found us laughing softly, sharing stories about his childhood. He looked between us, surprised. "What's going on here? Just girl talk," Sophie said, grinning. Daniel looked at me, cautious but hopeful. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Everything's beginning to be." He smiled. "Good." We spent the rest of the evening reminiscing, laughing. Sophie showed me the small garden she'd started behind the house. Tomatoes, herbs, a little lemon tree that was struggling to grow. "It's tiny," she said apologetically, "but it's ours." "It's perfect," I said. "Just give it time." Weeks passed after that, and I began visiting more often, sometimes with a basket of fresh bread or a jar of homemade jam. Sophie always welcomed me warmly, and little by little the distance that phone call had carved between us began to heal. One Sunday, Daniel and Sophie came to my house for dinner. It was raining again, the same soft rain as that first day. Sophie helped me in the kitchen, humming softly. She had a lovely voice, gentle and low. At one point, as we set the table, she turned to me suddenly and said, "Mike, can I tell you something?" "Of course, dear." She hesitated, her hands nervously twisting the dish towel. "I haven't told Daniel yet. I wanted to be sure before saying anything. But I went to the doctor last week." I froze for a second, my heart quickening. "Is everything all right?" She smiled, tears welling up. "More than all right. I'm pregnant." The room felt lighter suddenly, like all the heaviness of the past months had been washed away in that single breath. I covered my mouth, tears flooding my eyes. "Oh, sweetheart." She started crying too, laughing between sobs. "I wanted to tell you first. I don't know why. I just wanted to tell you." I hugged her then, tighter than I ever had. In that moment, something sacred passed between us. Not just forgiveness, but belonging. For years I'd prayed for my family to grow, and now in this small kitchen filled with the smell of stew and rain, I realized it had. Later that evening, after we'd told Daniel, who cried, by the way, like a boy again, I sat by the window once more, watching the rain. There was peace in me I hadn't felt in months. I thought back to that phone call, the one that broke me. And I realized something I hadn't understood then. Sometimes, love doesn't come to you wrapped in the way you expect. Sometimes it arrives quietly, clumsily, with mistakes. But it's still love, because family isn't about perfect timing. It's about showing up when it finally matters. It's strange how quickly a house can change its rhythm once joy finds its way back in. The months after Sophie's announcement were like a soft awakening. I'd stopped counting the days by silence and started marking them by the sound of her laughter on the phone, Daniel's cheerful updates, and the slow, steady heartbeat of new life growing somewhere just beyond my sight. Every Sunday they came for dinner. Every Thursday I went to their home, and every night before bed I whispered a little prayer, one I hadn't said since Daniel was a child. Please, God, keep them safe. Help me be the mother they need, not just the one I used to be. Sophie's pregnancy suited her in a way that softened everything. She glowed, truly glowed, though she'd laugh and deny it every time I said so. She'd waddle into my kitchen, lean against the counter with her growing belly, and say, "My, how did you do this alone? You make it look easy." I'd chuckle softly. "It wasn't easy, dear, not at all. But back then, we didn't call it strength. We just called it being a mother." She smiled at that, one hand resting over her belly. "I hope I can be half the mother you are." I reached over, brushing a stray hair from her face. "You already are." Daniel, of course, was the kind of father to be who made every moment an event. He painted the nursery 3 times, first yellow, then green, then back to yellow because it felt sunnier. He built a crib from scratch, spent nights reading baby books out loud, and kept asking Sophie what she was craving just so he could rush out and get it. Watching him, I saw the man his father would have been proud of. The boy who once needed me to hold his hand through storms was now someone else's anchor. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel left behind. I felt carried forward with him. One afternoon, Sophie called me out of the blue. Her voice was trembling. "Mai, can you come over?" My heart dropped. "What's wrong?" I don't know." "Something doesn't feel right." I grabbed my shawl and rushed out without even locking the back door. When I got there, she was sitting on the edge of the couch, pale, holding her stomach. "I think it's okay," she whispered. "Just a sharp pain." It came suddenly. I called Daniel immediately, and we took her to the hospital. Hours felt like years in that sterile waiting room. The smell of disinfectant, the hum of machines, the clicking of nurses' shoes. When the doctor finally came out, my hands were shaking. He smiled gently. "Everything's all right, just a scare, the baby's healthy. But she needs rest. No stress, no lifting, plenty of hydration." I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. When they wheeled her out, Daniel kissed her forehead, tears glistening in his eyes. "You scared me half to death?" he said. She smiled weakly. "I'm sorry." I touched her hand. "You're both okay. That's what matters." After that, I moved in for a while. I told them it was just to help around the house. But truthfully, I couldn't bear being far away. Those weeks became some of the most tender of my life. Every morning, I'd make breakfast. Oatmeal with cinnamon, the way Sophie liked it, and sit beside her on the couch while she read aloud baby names from a little notebook. "What about Ella?" she asked one morning. "Too common," I said with a smile. Clara. Better, or maybe Grace." I looked at her, the light from the window catching her hair. "Grace," I whispered. "That's beautiful." She nodded slowly. "It feels right." But just as peace had settled in, a shadow began to grow, one I didn't expect. It started small, the way Daniel began staying later at work, missing dinners, checking his phone a little too often. Sophie noticed, though she tried to hide it. I could see it in her eyes. The way she lingered on the clock, the silence that followed his messages saying, "Running late again." One night, after he didn't come home until nearly midnight, she sat beside me on the couch, her eyes red. "Mai," she whispered. "Do you think he's changing?" I looked at her, at the fear behind her voice. "No, dear. He's just scared. Becoming a father can shake a man. They don't always show it the way we do. He's trying to be everything at once, provider, protector, husband. Sometimes they get lost in it." She nodded slowly. "I just wish he'd talk to me." I reached for her hand. "Give him time. The right words always come when the heart's ready." Still, something gnawed at me, a mother's instinct that never really sleeps. So one evening, I called Daniel myself. "Son," I said, "come by tomorrow. Just you." He arrived, nervous like he used to be when he thought he was in trouble. I poured him tea, let the silence hang until he finally sighed. "Mom, I know why you called. Do you?" He nodded. "Sophie told you." I shook my head. "She told me nothing. I can see it on both your faces." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "I'm not cheating, if that's what you're thinking." "I'd never do that. He hesitated. "I feel trapped sometimes. Between work, bills, the baby coming. I love Sophie more than anything, but I don't know who I am outside of all this anymore." I listened quietly, my heart aching. Not with anger, but understanding. "You know," I said softly, "your father said the same thing once, right before you were born." Daniel looked up, surprised. "He told me." I continued, that he was scared he wouldn't be enough. That maybe love wasn't enough to raise a child. And I told him the truth. It isn't. You need patience, forgiveness, and the courage to let each other fail sometimes. Daniel looked away, his voice cracking. I don't want to fail her. Then don't hide from her, I said. Fail with her if you must. But don't leave her alone in the waiting. He nodded slowly, tears filling his eyes. You're right, Mom. I'll fix this. And he did. The next day he came home early with flowers. When Sophie saw him, she froze, tears spilling before a word was said. He knelt beside her, hands trembling. I'm sorry, love. I got lost in my fear, but I'm here now. She cupped his face and whispered, That's all I needed. I turned away quietly, letting them have their moment. And in that small, golden hour of reconciliation, I felt something sacred settle into the air, the quiet kind of grace that follows forgiveness. A month later, little Grace was born. The day she arrived, I stood outside the delivery room praying under my breath, my hands clasped tight. When I heard her cry, that sharp, beautiful sound, something inside me broke open. Daniel came out moments later, tears streaming, his voice trembling. Mom, she's perfect. When I held her for the first time, I thought, this is what healing feels like. Tiny fingers curling around mine, eyes barely open, heart beating so strong. I whispered, Welcome home, little Grace. That night, after they'd all fallen asleep, I sat in the hospital room by the window. The moonlight poured over the sleeping faces of my son, his wife, and their child, and I realized, that painful morning months ago, when Sophie told me they'd married without me, it wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of this family, this forgiveness, this grace.